In October 2025, the usually tense but quiet borderlands of northeast India once again turned into a theatre of coordinated insurgent activity. The two most formidable rebel groups operating out of Myanmar, the National Socialist Council of Nagaland, Kakopathar faction, known as NSCN, KYA, and the United Liberation Front of Assam Independent, or ULFA, carried out near-simultaneous attacks against Indian security installations in Arunachal Pradesh and Assam. These incidents have drawn attention to a growing cross-border militant alliance, signalling that the fragile calm achieved over recent months in the eastern frontier might be slipping away. The first of the two major attacks occurred in the early hours of October 15 to 16, 2025, in the remote Hatman village area under Myanmar subdivision in Changlang district, Arunachal Pradesh. Around 2:30 to 3:00 a.m., a heavily armed group of suspected NSCN, KYA, and ULFA militants launched a sudden pre-dawn assault on an Assam Rifles post stationed there. Eyewitnesses from nearby settlements later told reporters that they heard bursts of gunfire and multiple explosions that rattled the forested hills. The attackers, reportedly operating from positions in the surrounding jungle, used automatic rifles and improvised explosive devices to target the camp. 4 Assam Rifles personnel were injured in the assault. 2 soldiers, identified as Rifleman Harisharan and Rifleman Rahul Bora, sustained serious injuries and were airlifted by helicopter to the Air Force Hospital in Jorhat for urgent medical care. The quick reaction of the Assam Rifles troops prevented what could have become a much larger tragedy. Officials reported that the militants retreated into the darkness shortly after a 10-minute exchange of fire, disappearing into the thickly forested terrain that stretches all the way to the India-Myanmar border. Investigations carried out by security agencies following the attack point to a well-planned joint operation. Intelligence reports suggest that the militants entered Indian territory from Myanmar days before the strike and had been hiding in the forests near the village. The assault is believed to have been masterminded by senior cadres of the NSCN, KYA faction led by young Aung, in coordination with ULFA, operatives loyal to their commander Peyush Barua. Both groups have maintained a long-standing alliance, sharing operational camps inside Myanmar's Sagaing region, an area that has become a sanctuary for anti-India insurgents since the death of NSCN, founder SS Karplang in 2017. The Changlang attack was not an isolated event. Barely 24 hours later, another strike took place hundreds of kilometers away in Assam's Tinsukia district. In the early morning hours of October 16, 2025, ULFA militants opened fire and hurled grenades at an Indian army camp in Kakopathar. The attack occurred around 12:30 a.m., shocking residents of nearby villages who were awakened by loud explosions and gunfire. 3 army personnel were injured in the assault. Preliminary reports indicated that the attackers fired from a moving vehicle and then escaped toward the Arunachal Pradesh border. Security forces immediately cordoned off the area, launching a pursuit that continued into the next day. The ULFA later claimed responsibility for the Kakopathar attack, releasing a brief statement under the codename Operation Vengeance. The group declared that no amount of Indian military technology or modernization would deter their resolve. This rhetoric, reminiscent of the militant organization's early years, highlights a renewed confidence within the outfit despite years of setbacks and defections. The statement also appeared aimed at signaling to sympathizers that ULFA remains an active force capable of striking security targets in Upper Assam, a region once considered its traditional stronghold. Assam Chief Minister Himanta Biswa Sarma condemned the assault and linked it to groups controlled from Myanmar. His remark underscored a growing realization among Indian intelligence agencies that the ULFA and NSCN, KYA, have successfully reorganized across the border, taking advantage of Myanmar's ongoing internal instability. The region's porous jungle terrain and weak administrative control have provided safe havens for these outfits, allowing them to train, recruit, and plan cross-border attacks. Following the Kakopathar incident, the Indian Army and Assam Police recovered the vehicle used in the attack, a truck bearing registration number as 25 EC 2359, abandoned near Tengapani in Arunachal Pradesh. The vehicle's discovery reinforced the theory that the militants fled toward the border immediately after the operation, possibly merging with NSCN, KYA, cadres in the forests along the Turap-Changlang-Longding belt, a known insurgent corridor. Both incidents, the attack in Changlang and the assault in Kakopathar, reveal a worrying pattern. The coordination between ULFA-I and NSCN, KYA, suggests not just tactical cooperation, but also a shared strategic agenda. Over the past 2 years, security analysts have noted that these groups, once primarily concerned with their respective ethnic or regional demands, have found common cause in resisting Indian security expansion in the northeast. ULFA-I continues to push for an independent Assam, while NSCN, KYA, advocates for the unification of all Naga-inhabited areas under a sovereign Nagaland. Their cooperation, though pragmatic, has significantly strengthened insurgent capacity along the India-Myanmar frontier. Reports from Myanmar indicate that both groups have relocated many of their bases deeper into Sagaing and parts of the Naga self-administered zone, following repeated drone surveillance and air patrols by Indian security forces along the border. These camps reportedly house around 200 active cadres, including new recruits from northeastern states and from among ethnic militias in Myanmar who view India's increasing border fortifications as a threat to their cross-border networks. According to intelligence estimates, Young Aung's faction has maintained close ties with smaller groups such as the Eastern Naga Revolutionary Army and has intermittently collaborated with the People's Defence Forces, PDF, that are fighting Myanmar's military junta. This shifting alliance landscape complicates India's counterinsurgency strategy. For decades, the Indian government has relied on peace accords and ceasefires to stabilize its northeastern frontiers. Many Naga factions, including the NSCN-IM and NSCN-NNPG, have signed ceasefire agreements and entered into political dialogue. However, the NSCN-KYA remains outside this peace process, rejecting talks unless they are held on the basis of full Naga sovereignty. The faction, after splitting from the Karplang-led NSCN-K in 2018, has positioned itself as the uncompromising guardian of Naga independence. This hardline stance, combined with operational collaboration with ULFA-I, has made the group a persistent security challenge. Meanwhile, ULFA-I has also resisted multiple rounds of peace overtures. The outfit's commander-in-chief, Payesh Barua, continues to operate from Myanmar and occasionally issues statements reaffirming ULFA's commitment to Assam's sovereignty. Although a large section of ULFA's earlier leadership joined peace talks under the banner of ULFA Pro-Talks, the independent faction led by Barua rejects dialogue that does not address what it calls core political issues. The October attacks appear to be both a tactical demonstration of strength and a symbolic reminder to New Delhi that these groups have not been eliminated. The renewed insurgent violence comes at a time when India is heavily investing in cross-border infrastructure and connectivity projects. Roads, bridges, and integrated border checkposts are being constructed under the Act East policy to improve links between the Northeast and Southeast Asia. These projects, while economically vital, have also raised concerns among insurgent outfits who view them as tools of increased Indian control over traditionally autonomous tribal areas. The attacks, therefore, may also carry a political message aimed at discouraging the expansion of Indian military and administrative presence near their hideouts. Security analysts point out that October 2025 marks one of the most serious escalations along the eastern frontier since 2022, when similar joint operations by ULFA-I and NSCN, KYA, targeted security convoys in Arunachal Pradesh's Longding district. That incident, too, involved coordinated use of IEDs and automatic weapons, indicating a pattern of shared training and logistics between the groups. The latest attacks confirm that their cooperation remains intact and perhaps even more sophisticated. Following the twin incidents, Indian forces launched a large-scale combing operation covering parts of Arunachal's Changlang, Turap, and Longding districts, as well as Tinsukia and Dibrugarh in Assam. Additional troops from the Assam Rifles and special units of the Indian Army were deployed to secure vulnerable outposts. Drone reconnaissance flights were intensified along suspected infiltration routes. Officials have also been in touch with Myanmar authorities to share intelligence, though cooperation has been limited due to Myanmar's ongoing internal conflict between the junta and resistance forces. For residents of these remote border districts, the violence has renewed fears of instability. Many villages in the region straddle the forest border, where state presence is minimal and insurgent influence remains strong. Villagers often find themselves caught between militant pressure and security crackdowns. Following the Changlang incident, local administrators imposed night curfews and advised villagers to report any unfamiliar movements. Civil society groups in Arunachal and Assam have urged both state and central authorities to prioritize security in border villages and ensure that civilians are not harassed during military operations. The attacks also highlight a deeper geopolitical dimension. India's northeastern insurgencies have always had a transnational character, with sanctuaries and support networks in neighbouring countries. The NSCN, KOA, and ULFA continue to exploit the porous 643-kilometre India-Myanmar border, taking advantage of the lack of a physical fence and the challenging terrain of jungles and hills. Myanmar's Sagaing and Kachin regions host a web of ethnic armed organisations, many of which maintain ambiguous relations with both the Myanmar army and external actors. In this complex environment, Indian insurgents have been able to maintain bases without significant interference. New Delhi has long sought to strengthen defence cooperation with Myanmar to curb these threats. However, the military coup in Myanmar in 2021 severely disrupted bilateral counter-insurgency collaboration. The junta's focus on fighting domestic resistance has left large areas ungoverned, allowing insurgent groups greater operational freedom. Sources indicate that in some cases, local Myanmar commanders have even tolerated the presence of Indian rebel camps in exchange for informal payments or logistical cooperation against rival ethnic militias. This fluid situation has made it exceedingly difficult for Indian security agencies to conduct cross-border operations without risking diplomatic fallout. The October 2025 attacks, therefore, reflect both a tactical problem and a strategic warning. They reveal that despite years of military pressure and developmental initiatives, the roots of insurgency in India's northeast remain intact. Groups like ULFA and NSCN, KOA, continue to thrive on a mix of political grievances, ethnic aspirations, and cross-border sanctuaries. Unless there is a comprehensive regional security framework involving both India and Myanmar, these insurgent networks are likely to survive and adapt. Observers also note that the attacks may have been timed to coincide with India's increased military presence in border areas following reports of Chinese activity along the Arunachal frontier. By striking at a time of heightened security alertness, the insurgents may have aimed to demonstrate that Indian forces remain vulnerable to asymmetric warfare even within their own territory. The psychological impact of such attacks often outweighs their immediate tactical damage, eroding the sense of security among both troops and civilians. From a historical perspective, the cooperation between ULFA and Naga factions is not new. Since the 1980s, ULFA cadres received guerrilla training in Naga camps in Myanmar and the dense jungles of the Patkai Hills. The two movements, though ethnically distinct, have long shared logistical support and ideological camaraderie born out of a common opposition to Indian rule. The resurgence of this alliance under Young Aung and Peyush Barua thus represents a continuation of a decades-old pattern, a reminder that insurgency in northeast India is deeply interconnected across state and ethnic lines. In the weeks following the October incidents, reports have emerged of intensified surveillance and security restrictions across the Assam, Arunachal, Nagaland border zones. Special checkpoints have been set up, and local police have been instructed to monitor movement between villages. Yet the challenge remains formidable. The terrain is harsh, communication infrastructure is poor, and insurgents enjoy familiarity with the geography and local networks. This asymmetry gives them an enduring advantage in mobility and evasion. The Indian Army and Assam Rifles have also ramped up community outreach programs to counter insurgent influence, initiatives such as civic action projects. Youth engagement and local recruitment drives aim to build trust with villagers who might otherwise serve as sympathizers or informants for militant groups. However, these efforts are often undermined by the perception of heavy-handedness during search operations. Striking a balance between firm security measures and community cooperation remains a delicate task. Experts believe that the resurgence of the NSCN, ULFA alliance could complicate ongoing peace efforts elsewhere in the region. The government of India has been trying to finalize a political settlement with Naga groups under the 2015 Framework Agreement, but hardline factions like the KYA continue to reject compromise. Their reassertion of militant activity might embolden other smaller outfits to question the utility of peace talks, potentially derailing years of negotiation. The October attacks also highlight the urgent need for better intelligence sharing between northeastern states. Coordination between Assam, Arunachal Pradesh and Nagaland is crucial, as insurgents often exploit jurisdictional gaps to move undetected. Security experts have called for an integrated regional command structure that can respond rapidly to cross-border threats. For the people of the Northeast, these renewed hostilities bring back memories of earlier decades when militancy dominated daily life. Although most of the region has moved toward peace and development, the persistence of groups like ULFA, and NSCN, KYA, shows that the cycle of insurgency can quickly reignite if underlying issues remain unresolved. Poverty, unemployment, ethnic mistrust, and perceived neglect by the central government continue to feed resentment that militants exploit for recruitment. As October draws to a close, the Indian security establishment remains on high alert. Intelligence inputs warn of possible follow-up actions or retaliatory ambushes in response to ongoing counter-insurgency sweeps. The army and police have been advised to exercise extreme caution during patrols in forested areas. Drone imagery has been analyzed to identify possible hideouts along the Indo-Myanmar border. Yet despite these technological tools, the human dimension of insurgency, the loyalties, grievances and aspirations that sustain it, remains the most difficult to address. The coordinated strikes of October 2025 have therefore served as a grim reminder that the insurgent challenge in India's northeast is far from over. It exists not merely as a security issue, but as a complex political and social phenomenon intertwined with the region's history and geography. The NSCN, KYA and ULFA have once again demonstrated their capacity to adapt, survive and strike, drawing strength from shared ideology and cross-border sanctuaries. For New Delhi, the message is clear. Military suppression alone cannot resolve the insurgent question. Sustained political dialogue, economic inclusion and regional diplomacy, especially engagement with Myanmar's civilian and ethnic stakeholders, are essential for lasting peace. Unless these deeper approaches are pursued, the guns in the Patkai Hills may fall silent for a while, but they will never truly be laid down. The October attacks, brutal and precise, echo across the forests of Changlang and the tea gardens of Tinsukia, a warning that beneath the veneer of calm, the old fires of rebellion still burn. For the people of these borderlands, peace remains a fragile promise, tested again and again by the shadows that move through the night. Thank you for watching. Please do share this video and subscribe our channel ZalengamMedia.